Let me welcome all of us this afternoon. It's one of the things we have to do in furtherance of the committee's work. You are aware this committee has been set up to look at the very long-standing neglect, abandonment, and the huge cries of the oil-producing communities in the Niger Delta particularly. And this House took that decision by Mr. Speaker to set up this committee, which is not ad hoc. It is a standing committee of the House, as provided in the rules book. And our duty is to make sure that, one, to protect the rights and the welfare of the host communities. All issues of agreements, MOUs, GMOUs between host communities, government, both at the state and at the national level, organizations, local and international, that are entered into. We also have the mandate of the House to ensure that they are in line with best practices. We also have the 13% derivation. I'm sure you must have been aware. Very recently, Bayelsa State Government just won a landmark case on these issues of derivation, which is part of what we have been deliberating on for quite some time now. I think the last time we invited a lot of government agencies to that effect, because if you see what happens in the Niger Delta, you agree with me that even if some of the agencies and some of the interventionist agencies that have been put in place are not also doing very well, but even at that, you discover that the derivation principle, I think, may not have been properly applied. And to that extent, we're taking a look at it. Because if you say 13%, 13% of what? Are there taxes? Are there deductions? Who benefits from those deductions and those taxes, if they exist? And things like that. The hydrocarbon pollution, that's the HYPREP, which of course is the cleanup of Ogoni land, the Ogoni cleanup program, which of course, by the grace of God, as proposed by UNEP, is supposed to also affect the entire Niger Delta. We also oversight that project. And we've commenced interaction with virtually all oil companies in the country. Most of them, we have interacted with them. Some we have not. We do these interactions because we want to be able to understand, especially their CSR, what is it that is their problem with their communities in terms of vandalism, because even their losses, we request that we need to know what their losses are. Just like we need to know also what they have been able to give out to the communities and how they have done that. Because you will agree with me that in some cases, some of these companies are also reaching out to the communities, but they may not be reaching out to the communities through the appropriate channels. And then that aggravates the issues on ground. Because some people have turned themselves into warlords and want to speak for communities. And in the attempt to speak for the communities, what do they get? The communities are shortchanged. It is also the deliberate policy of most of the companies. And I make bold to say so. Because the level of levity with which they treat most of these communities they even attempt to bring it to our hearings. When you see companies that tend to want to decide not to provide the necessary data that we require of them because they have things to hide. And of course, they know that the time is up. The committee will not take that lightly. Yes, the committee is not out to witch hunt anybody. What we are trying to do is to make sure that there is a common ground where the investor is happy investing and those in the host communities are also happy that they are living in an area that was not by their choice, but by the grace of God, they found themselves there. And so because they found themselves there, they do not have to pay with their lives at all times. Because if you go to most of these communities, you discover that the livelihood means have been taken away. There's really nothing they can do. And there is not much that is being done from the operators. Some of the operators too are also doing their best. And we also make attempts. When we finish this level of interaction, we also are going to be in the Niger Delta. We're going to visit all the states. In some cases, we're going to visit senatorial districts to hold town hall meetings where we interact with the communities vis-a-vis the operators too and the various government agencies, armed with some of the data we're going to get from these agencies of government and the operators. It will be easier to engage the host communities. And the whole idea is to ensure that they live side by side and work side by side, so there will be greater productivity and better earnings for all Nigerians. If you take a look at the high prep, I read in the papers, high prep is not working, high prep is working and all that. We are commencing our engagements with high prep tomorrow, by the grace of God. We're going to look at what they are doing, what they ought to do, how far they have gone, what's their impact on the people, the social components of the project and all that. And I believe that it's going to be a better day for the Ogonis by the grace of God at the end of the exercise. Because if the project succeeds, since it appears to me a pilot project starting from the Ogoni axis, it means that it will do well in other parts of the Niger Delta and other parts of the country where there may be that level of contamination. Of course, you agree with me, the PIB, by the grace of God, when it comes into law, when it's passed and assented to by the president, it will reorder a lot of things in the oil industry. And it will make a better industry, both for the operators and for Nigerians, including the host communities. And that's why I also use the opportunity to also call on Nigerians to be patient with Parliament. You know, in the process of lawmaking, a whole lot of things are put into consideration. It is agreed from what the leadership of the House has said, this bill will soon be passed. And we hope and pray that when it is passed, Mr. President will assent to it and it comes, into operation. That way, the challenges of those communities will be reduced. The challenges of the companies themselves will also be reduced. And government earnings from oil will also increase, which means that there will be more money at the disposal of government for development in the country. Principally, if you look at, prior to this time, you see all kinds of petitions. Today, I'm aware, the gates of Ajib in Port Harcourt was blocked for certain demands by those in the community. You also see all kinds of such activities all over the Niger Delta. We have received several petitions. We are studying them. Our consultants are looking at them with the aim of ensuring that we bring the parties together and resolve the issues in such a way and manner that the country itself and those who live within that part of the country will have a better life. One thing this committee assures Nigerians and assures this House is that we will do our job in a way that it will bring glory to Nigerians. For me, as chairman of this committee, I must make it clear, I'm an Ogoni man from Rivers State. And I'm sure you are aware, the Ogonis have been raped severally. The Ogonis are, in fact, were a symbol of neglect, symbol of whatever you want to talk about in the industry. And so I don't think we want that to happen to any other part of the country. You are aware of the frontier issues. Oil is being they are prospecting oil in other parts of the country, and we are hoping and praying that we can get commercial quantities of oil in all those areas. What has happened to the Ogonis and other people in the Niger Delta, we would not wish it happens to any other person. And that is why the passage of the PIB becomes very, very necessary. To that extent, I think partnering with the media, we will be able to achieve a whole lot. But let me make it very clear. A lot of the companies are trying to be elusive. When invitations are extended to them, some of them are trying to avoid appearance. We will stop at nothing. We'll use every legislative instrument at our disposal to compel any such company, and erring companies in fact, to appear before Nigerians, because the House is the House of Nigerians, and they are accountable to the people of Nigeria. And so I use the opportunity to call on them to make hay when the sun is shining, so that before we get to the next stage, because we're going to do some investigations also, which also come as a result of the interactions we have already had with some of them. You see some companies will tell you that their CSR, they have done CSR for maybe about 10 communities, and they'll tell you it's 60 million. It's unfair. It's quite unfair. Nobody's saying it must be this. Well, let us do whatever we are doing, with some degree of fairness. Looking at other areas where our mandate also covers, we will ensure that we cover all grounds. You are also aware that the Host Communities Fund that is proposed in the PIB is also within our own mandate. And so to that extent, I thank all of us for all the support that you've given to the committee, and hope that we'll have a very unique and wonderful relationship through the life of this House. And I assure us that Nigerians, particularly those in the Niger Delta, will be better. In fact, Nigerians all over the country will be better, because when we are able to ensure that there is peace in the areas of operation in the Niger Delta, then it means that there will be more funds available to the Nigerian state. I think the Avengers gave an ultimatum, and I will urge them, by way of an appeal, that the peace we enjoy in the Niger Delta today, we can improve on it. Whatever the grievances are, should be brought forth. Because one, part of what we are doing is to make sure that, these issues don't come up. And by the grace of God, we'll do everything humanly possible to make sure that there is a resolution. Sometimes, as somebody who comes from the Niger Delta, sometimes you may be challenged, because I understand those threats were given, a day or two after some leaders were with Mr. President, we'll find out exactly what it is. And I can tell you that because the committee has members from virtually all the producing states, in fact, all the producing states, in most cases, communities. So we'll leverage on that and make sure that it doesn't happen. But I call on them, let us uphold the peace that we have for now, and let all issues be laid on the table so that they can be resolved. I believe that with this committee and with the PIB coming up, some of those problems will be resolved. Now, back to the issue of, you talked about the percentage. Well, I'm a member of the committee on PIB. The bill is still in the process, and the process of lawmaking is always, you think out with a lot of things, and I'm not also in a position to, because the bill has not been laid before the House as a committee, so it's only when it is laid before the House that it becomes some kind of document that is public. But so far, I can assure you that the committee is doing a good job, and the kind of practice that we see today will no longer be at the end of the exercise when the bill is passed and by His grace assented to, because that's another aspect of it. Of course, you know, it's an executive bill, so we believe strongly that it will be assented to at the end of the exercise. So, like when you talked about the fight, I was there, and what happened was two groups wanted to speak as one group. There's a group they call HostCom, and two people came as HostCom, and that's what led to the fight. And I think they finally resolved. They even ended up in my office here, and we talked at length, and I think they are all together now. But I can tell you, after the public hearing, a whole lot of legislative moves have been made. We have gone to the Niger Delta again to make sure that at least we have a first-hand visit to most of these communities. We visited a lot of the communities that nobody will tell you that something is happening here. And that also, to an extent, has informed a whole lot of things. You know, it's not just the public hearing you see. There are a lot of engagements, legislative engagements going on that will enable, you know, a better law that will come out. And when a bill is put before the House, it becomes our own property. We have to do what we have to do with it for the acceptance of Nigerians. And you have to do a bill that is operational, and not just a bill because you want to do a bill. So I can assure you, by the end of the exercise, we'll have a bill, a PIB that will be passed, and this 9th Assembly will be very proud. Everybody will be proud of this 9th Assembly. Like I said clearly, it's not my position to speak for the PIB because it's not yet before plenary. When it's laid in plenary, that's when we can speak. But I can tell you very, very clearly, whatever you call gray areas or whatever you may be referring to, I wouldn't know, but I can assure you that everything that needs to be done will be done for us to get a bill that will be ready for passage. This bill has been before the House for, I'm sure, about 20 years now. And from the speed with which it is being taken, you will agree with me that we're getting somewhere. I cannot state categorically because we have a chairman and we have a co-chairman of the committee on PIB. But I can tell you that very soon it will be laid. I can tell you that very soon it will be late.